All right. I think we're actually starting now. I was trying to start, and then YouTube took that exact moment to decide to sign me out, so I just had to quickly sign back in so I could actually press the go button. Welcome to Photolab. How is everybody doing? Christopher and Edith and Jason and Sandy and Peter and Peta and who else is here? I saw Mike is here. Steve is here. Welcome everybody. Happy to have you here, of course, with us on this wonderful, wonderful Thursday. Is it Thursday? It's Thursday. It's
Thursday, yep.
On this Thursday evening. Hey, Penny, how's it going? Good to have you here. And hello to Jeff and Leroy and Joe, JOH24. Hello, hello, hello. What have you guys been up to this week? Hey, Roderick, how's it going, bud? Thanks for joining. What's everybody been up to? It's like,
that's all, folks.
Not even a minute in, and I can't talk anymore. Jason says, how am I doing? Ask me after the production push Death March. You guys pushing out a new version of Red Hat then? Penny says she's in Microsoft hell. What's up with that, Penny? Charles, hello from the south. Charles Molt says, hello and welcome to the show. So we like to start, as you guys do know, those of you who are regulars, with a little bit of what you've been up to. So Roderick says he's been doing great. Jeff's been out shooting some birds this morning. Well, you guys are popping what you've been up to in the chat. Mark, why don't you share what you've been up to this last week for everybody?
Sure. Can you switch the view so I see the regular view?
I keep forgetting to do that.
Yeah, no kidding. It's easy to forget that.
All righty, there you go.
There we go. Hey, I look normal now. Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, last week on Monday evening, I sort of put out a last-minute call for some locals to get together to see if anybody was interested in shooting. So I had 4 photographers showed up, and 2 models showed up as well. So
nice
we got
turnout.
Yeah, we had a pretty good turnout for a sort of spur of the moment thing. So I was happy with that. We had some fun, and I got some decent pictures. I'll kind of quickly throw a couple of them here on the screen so you can see them.
Excellent. While you're doing that, Jason's working on a new website redesign push, is what he said. Peter's been fixing my very slow iMac, and he says it's finally fixed. How did you end up fixing that? Let's see. Penny says new hard drive and trying to get it all situated again. Geek Squad and Microsoft Tech support more times than I can count. That sounds a little bit like hell. I can see why you said that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say at work this week we went in on Monday or Tuesday, and our network basically got the crabs virus. Like basically, that's one of those ones where they hold everything hostage.
Oh, so one of those crypto viruses or whatever, ransomware.
Yeah, exactly. So our IT department was tackling that, and couldn't really do a whole hell of a lot at work because of that, because none of the files were accessible till everything got restored. Right.
Were they able to track down where it came from?
Yeah, but look, it turns out I think it was actually from one of the guys up in our office, because shortly after work started, I heard him calling down to the IT department, basically saying his laptop had crabs on it. So
there you go.
Yeah, there you go. So,
okay.
Anyways, I previewed a bunch of pictures there, so I hope everybody got the chance to see them there.
Mm-hmm. So tell us. So you guys were out shooting a little bit, and that was just for fun?
Yeah, it was just for fun. Cool. And also on this coming Saturday, I've got I think it's the 30th wedding anniversary party that I'm shooting for a client, and then on Monday I have another family shoot too. So I've got a couple of things coming up this following week, so I'm looking forward to that.
Nice, very nice. So let's see. PETA fixed the Mac by resetting the SMC, System Management Controller, and switching off Siri. Yeah, I don't think I've ever turned Siri on my iMac. I wonder if it's on here by default. I don't want to click the button because that'll probably turn it on.
Screw up the stream or something.
Yeah, so Jason's redesigning the website because they've got a big industry show next week in San Francisco. Charles says, I've been out shooting the beautiful magnolia blooms, the flower of the South. Ooh, that sounds really fantastic. Do you have any pictures we can see? If you do, drop them in the chat. Are we connected on? I always forget that you can't put links in the chat unless you're special like me and Mark, and admin in the chat. So if you have pictures to share, shoot me a message on Facebook. Steve says, haven't done much, trying to figure out a spot for a senior shoot. Lady at work wants me to do her daughter's in a few weeks. New lens in another case. I have too much crap. Yeah, it's easy to end up with too much crap. And Edith says, not much. She shot some fog shots on Saturday. Fog is a fun subject to shoot. I like that.
Yeah, it can be interesting for sure.
Yeah, so JOH24 has a question for you, Mark, wondering if you work with crop sensor or just full frame on professional work.
For the most part, full frame. I do have one wider lens, a 20 to 40, that is a crop body lens, and I do like that lens, so I'll usually keep that on my K5-2S, and therefore, just depending on what I'm doing, I'll switch back and forth. So basically, that's kind of how I work, especially with weddings. I'll keep my long lens, my 70 to 200 on the K1, and the wider one on the crop body.
Excellent. And if you're not aware, I mean, I don't shoot professionally in the same way. I'm not often hired for work, which is mostly by design. But I do always shoot crop because that's what I have. I use Micro Four Thirds. Hey, Aaron, dude, how have you been, man? What's going on? He said, shot a wedding with a total of 7 people in attendance. I'm imagining that was by design, that they only had 7 people in attendance. If not, I would imagine... Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's probably they have one of those, what do they call them, where they...
Elopement?
Yeah, elopement, that's it. It's probably an elopement.
Yeah. Aaron, we still got to get together sometime. That would be super cool and super fun. Aaron is a Wisconsin-based photographer like me, lives a few hours, a couple hours away from me, and we've talked on Facebook, but we've never actually had a chance to get together. So we're going to have to do that sometime soon. Charles said, must have been a shotgun wedding. So yeah, we've got a photo here that Jason Porter sent that he shot this week. So I'm going to pop this up and just share this picture. So this is from Jason. Jason, if you want to tell us a little bit about this shot in the chat, go ahead. Looks like a super cute, adorable baby. I'm guessing maybe in a baby seat. Either way, I like the intimacy of that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. It's a nice tight shot like that works well in this case for sure.
Yeah. Aaron says it was a small thing and definitely by design, by the Fox River, super relaxed. That's awesome. And we will. Yeah, we need to do that. We'll do that sometime. We'll figure it out. Jason shot that with the iPhone, edited into Snapseed. That's awesome. Sometimes those are the best shots when you see an opportunity and you pick the camera that you have, which for a lot of us is just going to be that smartphone, and then you take that shot, which is super awesome. Steve says we are going to TC. Okay, quick levels check for everybody. TC just commented that my mic is lower than Mark's. Oh, I know why. I didn't level Mark out in the audio. Every time we do this, I have to re-level Mark. So let me just bring him down a little bit so that he's a little bit more even. Yeah.
Keep me level-headed.
Yeah, that should be better. That should be a little bit more even.
Yeah, that was one thing we forgot to do today. Usually we do that first thing before we go live.
Yeah, I forgot to do that. My apologies for that, guys. TC says, I will be planning some shoots this summer using a new Canon 70 to 200 millimeter f4L lens, the image stabilized ultrasonic motor version that I'm getting for my birthday in 10 days. Says, I'm really stoked. It will be the first L lens for me. That's cool. That's nice. A really, really good lens. I think you're really going to enjoy that lens.
Yeah, people really like that lens.
Yeah, absolutely. The 2.8 is another great lens. The f4, obviously, it's a little bit slower. That doesn't make it a bad lens. And what's amazing, too, is is that f4 is significantly cheaper than the 2.8. So like if you need a good quality 70 to 200, but you can't splash out the money for a 2.8, that f4 is just an amazing choice to go with.
Yeah, and if you don't do a lot of low light shooting, then it's definitely a perfect lens.
Yeah, 100%.
And even still, like the 2.8 to f4 isn't a huge difference.
Right. Right. I mean, it is a bit, but it's not so enormous that, you know. Exactly. TC says the 2.8 is nice, but double the weight and the price. So
yeah.
Exactly. Let's see. Steve says we are going to the UP in Michigan over Memorial Weekend, going to try to do a bunch of landscape and wildlife stuff as much as possible. That should be a lot of fun. And we got Larry from Sparta, Wisconsin, old guy, new to this format, trying to get into portrait photography. Well, you're in the right place.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. Any questions you have about this, go ahead and let us know. And of course, you guys know from the posts and the title that we're talking about portraits, creative photo shoots, planning and setting up your photo shoots. So any and all questions on this, of course, are welcome. So if you have questions, go ahead and start dropping them into the chat. We already have a couple from before the show started, and both in the chat and on the Facebook. So before we jump into that, I wanted to share with you guys what I've been up to. First being the fact that if you haven't noticed already, my head is like sunburnt AF, as it were, to keep it clean. Red. So that is because I spent the last 3 days in Wausau, which is a city about 45 minutes north of where I live. And there was a conference there called After Dark 1274, which is a photography conference is the easiest way to describe it. Basically, it was sort of a 3/4 day get together / learning free for all. And I was there as what they call a floating mentor, meaning I wasn't like formally presenting any workshops. They had a whole schedule of people who were giving specific workshops, but I was there to kind of roam around and help people that needed help and throw together impromptu workshops when it made sense to do that. So we spent 4 days in Wausau running around shooting photos. I was out in the sun all day on Monday, which is where I got the sunburn. And I shot some fun photos, and I wanted to share those with you guys. I didn't shoot a ton on purpose because, as you guys know, I am woefully far behind in my editing.
Only been 6 or 9 months, right?
Yeah, I mean, only 6 or 9 months. So, yeah, okay. So let me just hop into this folder here. I just want to show you a couple of the really fun shots. The first is, and this is how this kind of thing goes. I was there with Pierre Stevenson. If you guys watched my Michael's Challenge video, you'll know who Pierre was. He's a photographer. Who Pierre is? He's a photographer based out of Madison, Wisconsin, which is just an hour and a half south of me. That's actually where I grew up. I met him at WPPI in Las Vegas, and he brought with him this guy right here. His name is Brady. And Brady is amazing. Like, holy crap, Brady is cool. This guy built a custom boom arm to attach to cars to take awesome photos of these cars while they are driving, which is crazy cool. And this was a setup test shot for the first workshop that I pulled together, or not just me, but Pierre and I pulled together, because we were sitting there talking about what we should do, and I don't even know how we came around to it, but we decided we wanted to burn something. we wanted to make some torches, and we grabbed the model being Cassandra, who is really fantastic, and let me show you one of the shots here. Actually, this is my favorite shot right here that I got in this particular scenario. And TC says Mark is still louder. Talk a little bit for me, Mark.
Sure. Let's see. I guess I can. I think it was Charles had asked about getting the Magnolia pictures to us. So I basically told him to send either yourself or myself a message on Messenger with either a link or some pictures. So there's some talking.
Okay, that should even it out a little bit better now. Sorry about that, guys. I leveled it out a little bit better, so we should be good to go there. So anyway, I just wanted to show you guys this shot. I put a blue light in the background and put an orange light on her, and then of course we have the torch here, which turned out super cool. And then we were explaining how all of this works to people. So we were explaining, yeah, Jason, that's basically what it was like. So what do you want to do tonight? I don't know. What do you want to do? Let's play with fire, right? That's kind of what happened. So we did this first setup here, and this is my favorite shot that I got with this setup right here. And I wanted that cool contrast against that fiery, warm, torchy foreground. And then we pulled that light setup apart, and I decided to do this kind of more dramatic, simplified setup, which gave me this shot right here. These are all unedited, and I really, really like this one because there's such a ferocity and a primalness to this photo with Cassandra here and with the torches. So I love, 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 love that. And then one more I want to show off real quick was the second night when I decided to pull together another workshop and show this triple exposure in camera look that you can do by manually popping your flashes 3 times throughout an exposure. So this was about an 8-second exposure, if I recall, or maybe 15-second. Let me see the metadata here. It's not, here it is, 15-second exposure, 3 flash pops. To give us these 3 different poses of Cassandra as she moved through the scene. And really, really fun. Had a really great time at that. As I said, got sunburned, met a lot of cool people, and it was a blast. I really just had a fun time there. Cool. So let's catch up in the chat here and see what else is going on. TC says, oh, yeah, so Charles, I don't know if you sent us the images, but if you can send them through, we'll definitely pop them up and share them with everybody. You can friend me or Mark on Facebook to do that. TC said he's kind of bummed out that they don't include the tripod mount ring with the F4, but they do with the F8. And yeah, that's very true, but granted, the F4 is half the weight, so that's probably why they decided not to do that. Roderick says, I love a good autofocus sunburn. Oh, Jason says, I learned about the Bernizer method this week and tried it a couple of times. If you guys aren't familiar, the Bernizer method is this idea of creating a shallow depth of field, full-length portrait by taking a number of exposures of the individual at close range with something like an 85, you know, or maybe a 105 or whatever particular somewhat longer focal length lens with a wider aperture. Whereas normally, like with an 85, to get close enough to get the depth of field, you'd maybe only get a headshot. So instead, you take a number of shots of the subject, and then you stitch all of them together, and because you're at that close distance, and because you're essentially making a panoramic or a composite of all of these numbers of shots, you're able to do like this full length, but get that shallow depth of field, which is a really cool thing. I messed around with that a little bit, but I haven't done it enough to like be really good at it. It's something that
I've never even tried it myself.
Yeah, it doesn't normally suit my style of shooting, which is why it's not something that I've done a lot of. Jason says, love that lighting on those trees back there. Thank you. I was deliberately going for like this sort of, you know, that particular look, that kind of very eerie, cool, almost alien look, which I thought was really cool. Let's see. Charles says, I prefer to shoot things that don't complain. Yeah, I got what you mean. I got what you mean. Let's see. Hey, Dave, how's it going, bud? Dave was also at After Dark. We ran into each other probably like a dozen times as we were all going back and forth, and we got to hang out and chat a little bit too, which was awesome and super fun. And we didn't talk about it in depth, but we did talk about having Dave back on the show again. So that's something we'll probably do in the next few weeks or so, depending upon how our schedules line up. And we'll need, of course, to come up with a good topic to bring Dave back for. One of the things I was thinking, Dave, because you are the pinup guy, that maybe we do a show on shooting pinup, and you could talk about how you do that and share with people like what makes pinup and all of the stuff that goes into that. So if you guys would be interested in that, let us know in the chat here, because I think that'd be a great topic.
Yeah, I didn't know Dave did pinup. That's cool.
Yeah.
Or he mentioned, and I just totally forgot. We were talking about
Let's see. Jason says, the torch reminded me of Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider reboot games. That would be super fun. And her outfit was Tomb Raider-ish, so that could work right there. Yeah. All right, so tonight we're talking about planning and prepping for photo shoots. And, oh, TC says there's an old abandoned concrete place that I'm wanting to use for a shoot. How do I go about getting permission? Okay, so that's a good question. Let's just start with that. The very first thing to do is try to determine ownership, right? Now, because it's an abandoned place, you can make a calculated risk here, right? And I'm not advocating you do this because this is law breaking. So, huge disclaimer here is, you know, if you are going to make a decision like I am about to describe, realize that you are taking a potential risk. So the very first thing to do is to check the local laws for the particular region that you're in. Because if you do it right, all you need to worry about is a potential trespassing violation. And if it's just trespassing, you might get a ticket, you know, you might get a fine if you don't ask permission, but it won't be much more than that, and it won't really be a very big deal. Now, what I mean by doing it right means exactly what Steve says. No sign, no problem. Just don't hop fences or break down any doors or break any windows. In other words, if it's a place that you can like literally just walk into and there are no signs that explicitly say no trespassing, then you could basically take that risk and go there. So TC said, would they take my photos? The police should not take your photos, okay? It is possible that they might try to, okay? But you know, because police are people and people are going to do things that may or may not always be rational and within the, you know, the letters of the law, like you potentially taking the chance to trespass on this property, it's possible they could take the images for you. They should not be able to take the images because as a photographer, you know, there are protections around those images and them just being able to take them or force you to delete them. And Aaron just made a really good point. Can't hurt to have a lookout. Now, to back that up a little bit, Roderick went exactly where I was going to go. Your local tax collector or your local deeds office, your register of deeds, would list the owner of the property or parcel. And if you want to do it that way, then all you would have to do is do a little bit of legwork to track down the owner and just approach them and say, hey, you know, you own this property over here. Would you be okay if I went in there and I shot some photos? I am not going to, you know, damage or destroy anything. I will happily sign a liability waiver. If I get hurt, it will be entirely my own fault, and you will have no liability whatsoever. Things along those lines. And those are basically the two approaches to that. Urbex, urban exploration photography, is a long-standing genre of photography, and many, if not, you know, not, I shouldn't say all, but many of those urbex photographers do exactly what we just described. They make a calculated decision. They, you know, sometimes do contact the owners and get permission, and they sometimes do actually trespass. And quote-unquote, you know, good urban photographers are the ones who are going to go in respectfully, photograph in that place, do as little as possible to disturb it, will deliberately not destroy it, and then will leave as respectfully as they got there. You know, quote-unquote bad urban photographers will go in and will trash a place and do all kinds of, you know, whatnot to it. But those are the two basic choices. Go to the deed, find the owner, ask them, or take that calculated risk of trespassing. As long as you don't break stuff, you should be fine by staying within just the trespassing violation. Once you start breaking things and damaging, then you move into like breaking and entering and other possible misdemeanor or larger offenses.
Yeah, when I was down in New York last year, we went to this one place, it was an abandoned sale asylum. It had like buildings all over the place, and they were all boarded up. So for the most part, most of the pictures they took were from the outside. But that being said, there was the odd building where somebody else had already broken in. So
right,
it was technically open. So I went in and took a few pictures. I admit that.
Yeah, yeah. Which
but we didn't actually break in per se because it was already open. So we just walked in, took a few pictures, and called it a day, and then got out of there.
Right, right. And Steve brings up a good point. This is a reality in the world. Some states have conceal and carry laws, and if you are a person who conceals and carries, he points out that if you are trespassing and you get busted, that can be felony trespassing with a firearm, which is a whole nother thing. So if you're a conceal and carry sort of person and you want to do urbex, don't bring your gun with you because that's probably a bad idea. TC says, TC says, I don't see what I could possibly break. The place has been abandoned for 20 years, and most all buildings are tin and rusted. What we mean, the very specific thing about breaking is, like, if a place, like Mark said, is boarded up, if the windows are boarded up, any doors that might exist are closed or boarded up, and you would have to forcibly, break... and enter, that's where it becomes a problem. If you can find an entry point that you can literally just pass through without, forcibly entering is the key. Yeah. If you can just pass through, you should be okay, and you'll be limited to trespass. Again, also check the ordinances, check the local laws for your region. Again, huge disclaimer, big shining lights. You do this at your own risk.
Yes.
Do your research and prepare. You could get trespassing fines or other if you don't approach it properly.
Yeah, 9 chances out of 10 if you do get caught, you plead ignorance and you're polite and everything about it, the odds are they'll just say, okay, get out of here.
And you'll be fine.
But if you're an ass about it, then the odds increase that you end up getting in bigger doo-doo than anything else.
Yeah, yeah. Be super respectful if somebody approaches you. Immediately offer to leave. And a trick that you can use if they are trying to come after your photos is prior to going in there to shoot, put in a blank memory card in your camera and take a look at. You actually don't even have to do this so that it matches what's on your camera, but just put like a black image on your memory card in the folder where your where your images would be, that has it's just a black background, and then it just says no image, right? And then if they say, we want to see your photos or delete your photos, you can just quickly go to that image and make it look like you've deleted the photos on the card.
Or you have two
little trick.
If we have 2 card slots, write to both cards and just give them 1 card.
Right. So a little trick from your Uncle Spyros. Okay. Charles says, or just weave a tale that you represent some interested party in buying the property. That's a good. That's a possibility too. Well, officer, this guy on YouTube, Jason says. Yeah. Hey, I love Made It. How's it going? Okay. And Roderick's wondering if anybody saw Jason Lanier's video from Six Flags. I did not see that.
I've seen that one. It was good.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check it out then. David says, see link to Abandoned Journeys Facebook page. David sent that to you in a direct message, TC, so check that out. So he must have been trespassing. Jason must have on that property in Six Flags. Yeah,
the police actually showed up there, but they didn't give him a hard time, really. And they did because they're supposed to, but they were cool about it.
Yeah, and that's often what it boils down to. Now, we had another question from prior to we even started the show from Mike Ozinski, wondering about, sent it to me, David. Okay, got it. Let me grab that link, and I'll pop it in the chat for you guys right now. Here's the Abandoned Journeys Facebook group that David just sent. So if you guys want to check that out, that is a resource you could look into. Okay, so Mike's question was, he was wondering if I have any, you want to know about the AD200s that I have been using, the Godox, and was wondering what I think about them and the different flash heads they have and what the best way is to use them. So I'm actually going to grab one real quick because I want to explain what he's talking about when he says different flash heads. So give me just a second here. Mark, you can entertain while I'm going to grab these.
Okay. let's see. I was going to say something. Charles had sent me those images you want me to show, but unfortunately he sent them into my business chat, and I couldn't extract the photos from it. But if you send it to me in the regular messenger, just to myself versus my business, I should be able to get them and I can show them to people on here. Or even if you just have a link to maybe like if you have them posted somewhere online, send me a link that I can post in the chat here so other people can check them out as well too.
All right. I missed what you were saying.
Oh, that wasn't important. Don't worry about it.
Alrighty. Okay, so I have the AD200 here, and this, whoops, wrong screen, guys. This is the AD200, okay? Now, if you're not familiar, the AD200 is technically what you'd call a monolight, in that it is this sort of, fixed, more powerful, quote-unquote, studio-style light. But it's also very similar to a speedlight. Like if you can see here, the size and shape of a speedlight is similar. A speedlight obviously can tilt its head like that, whereas this cannot. So that's why this is kind of a little bit more like a monolight. But it has this style head on it, which is similar to a speedlight. Now this, if you're not familiar, is called a Fresnel. A Fresnel is this piece, this head, or this point of exit for the light. And this Fresnel controls the beam spread. Now on a speedlight flash like this, you can actually change the zoom. You can move the position of the bulb back and forth in here to further change the light beam spread. And that's one of the cool things about the speedlights. And on here you have a fixed Fresnel head at 35 millimeters. And what that means is this light spreads at the same field of view that a 35 millimeter lens would give you on a full frame camera. Now I use this Fresnel head most of the time, but it also comes with a bare bulb head, which is really cool. The fact that I can actually swap out the style of head on my light, to me, is just absolutely amazing. I'm putting it on upside down. And boom, just like that, now I've got a bare bulb head on my my AD200. So why would I use this versus this? So this sort of head is excellent for using in situations where you are spreading the light out quite a bit. And the reason for that is you have this bare bulb, which means the light is kind of going to go everywhere, right? So if you're putting this inside a soft box or a beauty dish or an umbrella soft box or something like that, this is going to maximize the use of the diffusion area, the softbox, or whatever modifier that you're using. It's going to cover the entirety, use that whole reflective / diffusion surface, and give you the quality of light that you're looking for out of that. Whereas this is going to give you that more directed beam of light. Now I principally use the Fresnel head because if you've seen any of my photography, you know that I tend to use more direct light, more focused light, harder light, for lack of a better term. Light that is not spreading and bouncing all over the place. So for me, I love the opportunity that I can change these different heads, that I can switch from this back to this, and then go the other direction again if I have a want or a need to. But that's generally how you would use the difference, how you would use these heads and the difference between them. This gives you a more focused and controlled beam, and when you want that, you should use the Fresnel head. This is going to put light and splash it all over the place, which is also good if you want it. Now, if you do go with this route, you can still focus the light by getting something like this. Let me show you guys real quick what I'm talking about. You just get a reflector. Godox, let me switch over so you guys can see here. AD200 reflector. I can't type because of this ginormous Band-Aid on my fingers. So right here, this is the Godox standard reflector, and this is going to go around the bulb here and create a little reflective surface that's going to direct the light forward, right? So this gives you a measure of control with that light, keeping it from splashing all over the place, but it's still going to give you a much wider beam of light than this Fresnel head would give you. All right, so that gives you another degree of control there. And then if you noticed here on Amazon, there's this other level here where now you can put gels on there, and you can even put a grid on there for an even more focused beam. I'm just looking at this. I might buy this kit and check these gels out. It's not in many colors, but I'm really hating my current gel situation right now. At any rate, that's why you would use and choose one or the other of these heads. The Fresnel for a tighter, more controlled beam, this for a wider, larger coverage area beam of light. All right. So, hey, Scott is here. Click the order now, Steve says. Quick! That's not a bad price. 24 bucks for 4 gels, and these, I imagine, are going to be a fairly thick, solid plastic gel, plus a grid, plus the reflector, and then, of course, this small diffuser, and a lens cleaning cloth on top of it. Yeah. Jason says, oh, look, shiny new gear. Yeah, I might just make that purchase. Maybe. I'm not buying anything right now. All right, so, hey, Rick made it. How's it going, Rick? Let's catch up here in the chat here. So, okay, we got that in there. Jason says, complete speculation here, but what does everyone think about Nikon and Canon going full speed ahead with mirrorless cameras? Mark, what do you think about that?
Well, I think they should have gone full speed ahead on mirrorless cameras about 2 or 3 years ago, but seeing as they didn't, it's probably about time, and hopefully they actually do a good job of it, because if it turns out to be another crap show, for lack of a better term, and to be a little bit polite, then then they could be in a lot of trouble, because, well, as it stands, if it's their first one out, it better be one hell of a good camera to keep up with what Sony's putting out, and the other manufacturers that are doing the mirrorless as well too. So
yeah,
it's definitely long overdue, and they better get it right, or I think they're going to have their hands full.
Yeah, and both have made some strides into mirrorless. I agree with you 100%. Canon have made a little bit better strides with their EOS M line. Now, obviously, the M line was a joke when it debuted. The EOS M was intentionally crippled by them. Could have been a great first entry into the mirrorless market, and instead they deliberately gave it a shit autofocus system. And that just absolutely hampered and killed that camera. Barring that, they would have come in strong, and I think they could have had better market and mind share in mirrorless than they currently have, because now I see these cameras like the M5 and the M50 and whatnot that have come out, which are legitimately good cameras, legitimately good mirrorless cameras. And many people are very critical of them, not because they're bad, but because Canon is so late to the game with them.
Well, they're further ahead than Nikon.
They are further ahead. Now, Nikon had made some strides ahead of Canon because they had their J line, or their 1 line. I can't remember what it was called. But it appears that that line was effectively abandoned and killed, and now they're going all in on this full-frame mirrorless that they've been very vocal about, Nikon has. So they have lagged way too far behind on this, and in my opinion, they need to play a whole heck of a lot of catch-up. I'm curious to see what their cameras are going to look like. The biggest advantage they will have is if they can come out with cameras that make it very, very easy to use the existing lens selections that they have. But they can't do it, in my opinion, they're not going to be able to do it by maintaining the same native mount on the camera. In other words, I don't expect that, you know, the new Nikon mirrorless camera is going to use the F mount. If it does, then it's still going to be a big old box of a camera, because you need that flange distance. That's what Pentax did with that K01 mirrorless camera, I think it was.
Yep.
Way, way, way back. And And so if this is something that Sony never did that I always thought they should have done if they wanted to win even more people over, which is when they first were launching these A7 cameras and when they still needed to build out their lens line, they should have thrown their adapters in for free. Rather than charging people, you know, the whatever $100, $200, $300. I don't know how much those adapters were, but you know, however much it costs to get that adapter to use your Canon or Nikon lenses. And it was principally just Canon. I don't even think they had adapters for Nikon in the beginning. So like if Nikon releases this camera and in the box you get an adapter that adapts all of your existing Nikon lenses, boom, then they're going to be able to capture all of the Nikon shooters who are interested in mirrorless but didn't want to move because of the cost of having to switch over to a whole new lens system and deal with adapters that aren't great or just didn't want to deal with adapters at all. So we'll see what they do. I'm curious, but at the same time, I don't want to say I don't care, because obviously I do, but I kind of don't, because as we've said time and time again, you almost have to work really hard to buy a bad camera. The only difference between X camera and Y camera is understanding the capabilities and what you need out of one. So, you know, these mirrorless cameras I expect will be good. And, you know, they may have their problems because every camera does, but they're still going to be good cameras. And then Canon and Nikon will be able to say, hey, look, we got these really great mirrorless cameras now. Look at us. We're part of the market. And everybody's going to be like, yeah, welcome to the party. You guys are about 4 years late, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And that'll be...
Like you said, all the different cameras and manufacturers are great. Each of them have their own specific little quirks. And nothing bugs me more than oh, well, I don't like the quirk that this manufacturer has, so I'm going to jump ship and go to another brand, and find out that other brand has quirks too that I can't live with, so you jump to another brand. So it's like they all have their quirks.
Yep.
Learn to work around them and just stick to one brand instead of jumping around all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. What I see a lot of...
There's so many people that do that. It's insane. It's like that costs you so much money doing stuff like that, jumping around.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree 100%. All right, so Steve says, this is also a good point, going back to the AD200s, if you get a cheap S-mount bracket and any modifier you currently have for pretty much any mount, and that the S-mount is a Bowens S-mount, which is a very universal mount for modifiers on for flashes, and I'll pop back over here to Amazon so you guys can see what we're talking about. Godox S-mount bracket. Looks like this right here. And what you do is you put the flash in like so, and then you just screw down that mounting clamp, and any speedlight or any speedlight style flash like an AD200 can just slide on in there. And on the front, there you can see these 3 notches. The S-mount style has those 3 notches. You just slide it in and twist it, and it locks into place, and boom, your adapter is attached to your flash. So there are S-mount soft boxes, umbrella boxes, all kinds of other crap out there that you can get. And you can get stuff for pretty reasonable price too. So that's another nice advantage to this speedlight, is the very easy ability. I mean, you can do it with speedlights too, but the very easy ability to use Bowens adapters if those are adapters that those are modifiers that you have. And let's see. Steve says he loves his. David said, I just got back from a school trip to University of Notre Dame, took a group photo of 135 students on the practice field, got several other shots with potential, but I'm also behind on my editing. I hear that. All righty. We had another sort of question, but I wanted to share this with... Yeah, Dave's got the M5, and he says, I love the M5. Sandy says, I would totally buy a full-frame mirrorless from Canon. I love my little M50. Yeah, I haven't actually played with the M50, but I had the EOS M for video. And aside from the crap autofocus, I really like that camera. I used it for video for years before I started using these Panasonic cameras, and I actually still have one of the 3. I gave the other 2 to my niece and nephew, brother and sister, because they wanted to start making YouTube videos, and I was like, here, I've got these cameras I'm not using. I'll show you guys how to use them, and then you guys can start making YouTube videos. So I Love says if they could just come up with a mirrorless that does not collect so much dust on the sensor. Yeah. Yeah, RJ, that's exactly what I was just talking about. Rick says the early Canon M series, the EOS M, which is, again, the one I was using, or the M3 are a bargain for video use. He says not a fan for the stills, though. Let's see, Tom says it was leaked the Nikon mirrorless will come with an adapter for the F-mount. That's a smart move in my opinion, like I said before. And Nikon and Canon are going to have to kill it on the first release or they are done with mirrorless, Steve says. Hopefully the wait is worth it. They need everything that is good on Sony and nothing that is not. Yeah, you're right. They need that.
Yeah. I got those pictures from Charles. So
excellent.
If we want to have a quick look at that, we can do that.
Yeah, why don't you pop those up? Sandy says, I just paid $199 for my EF to M adapter. I have, I think, 2 of those adapters. And I had 3, but I gave one to my niece with the camera because the adapter was necessary for the lens that I was giving to her with the camera. I got my adapters for $50 because I bought my EOS M cameras and the adapters when they were on fire sale. And it looked like Canon was going to abandon the M line. And then they decided to go back in with it, the M3, the M5, M50, etc. And now those adapters are back up to that $200 price point. So I'm sitting on those 2 adapters like a little gold mine right now. Because again, I still have that one M, and I do on occasion use it, and I want to be able to adapt my the EF lenses that I still have for it.
Right.
Scott's been wanting a D500 from Nikon, but may wait to see what they offer in mirrorless. And Rick says that he may pick up one of those EF-M to EF adapters as well. PETA's on his 3rd Fuji mirrorless. No complaints there. Oh, and Roderick makes a good point that the S-mount adapter also gets the umbrella axis much closer to the flash axis. That's absolutely right, because oftentimes when you put a speed light on a mount and then you put the umbrella into the umbrella adapter, the head of the speed light is actually pointing up towards, you know, like up above the central axis of the umbrella. You can still get good coverage in an umbrella if you put down your Fresnel expander, your wide angle Fresnel, and you widen your zoom, but that does give you a better, you know, puts the light right into the axis of the umbrella or the modifier, which is pretty nice. Yeah. Tom says I have that exact same mount for my speed light with the Bowens.
Yeah, I'm not sure how well these are coming through the stream, but this one here especially, I really like the lighting on this one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the magnolias are really beautiful.
Yeah, he did a great job on those. To myself here.
All right. So another question that we had about prepping for a photo shoot in the chat. And again, if you guys have questions about this, anything related to coming up with ideas and or prepping for a photo shoot, go ahead and ask them in the chat. We will happily answer them. Oh, Charles says, for those who may not know, those blooms are about 10 to 12 inches across and smell awesome. That's a huge bloom. That's monstrous. So prior to the show starting, in the chat, Peter was mentioning that he was installing some software for rendering and trying to use it to plan photo shoots. And I immediately thought of software that I am actively using, and I decided I'd show you guys because this software can be really helpful for both planning a photo shoot and planning your lighting setups for a said photo shoot. So I'll just show you this real quick. Disclaimer. This is not sponsored. I purchased the software with my own money. I'm showing you this tool because I think it's a useful tool and you might get some use out of it. I think I paid $40 for their basic version of this software, which is called Set a Light 3D. And what it allows you to do is come in here and literally 3D model a whole setup. So you can see here, you've got the camera, you can move the camera up and down, you can change the position of the camera. Whoops, that's the backdrop I grabbed there. You can change the head of the camera position and how it's aiming at the subject. You can rotate the camera. I gotta change my view. Over here you have this ability to change the view. So like I can grab the top here and rotate the camera now this way, like so. It's weird that it's showing it. Oh, I know why it's showing it like that. So you can do all these different things. And what I love about this is you can also change the lights here, right? So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and we have this light over here. Now I'm actually going to get rid of this light. I'm going to remove it from the set, which I can do over on the side here, and I'm going to put in here a speed light, which is what many of us actually use. So I'm going to double click that, and now you can see over here, this is the problem of 3D modeling, is like seeing what you're actually working with, and in a 3D space, referencing it and understanding where things are and being able to manipulate them. So like, take a look right now. Up over here in the upper right of this screen is the actual image preview based upon the lights that are in the scene and the settings on those lights and the camera settings, giving you a pretty realistic preview of what this would look like. So let's take a look at the camera. Like right now it says full frame. Let's change it to a crop 2 because I use a micro four thirds camera, right? And I'm going to set it to 4:3 because that's the aspect ratio I use. And we're going to put it to 12:40 because that's the lens that I typically use. And then you can set your zoom. Got to figure out where to set it. There we go. We rotated the lens here. You can set your zoom with this little zoom toggle down here by the camera. So I'm zooming in on the subject. And now watch what happens when I move the flash head. It shows you that the flash axis, so you can actually point it at your subject. You can aim it. And by moving the light, you can see how the light changes on the subject, right? You can literally 3D model your whole setup right here. And you can add additional people into this, right? Like let's say I'm actually working with 2 models. You could model 135 people in here. It might take some time, but let's just go back down here to models, and let's say I want to put a male in there. I got to be careful because some of these models are nude, which I have no problem with, but for the purposes of this video, I don't want to accidentally drop a male figure into this, right? So I can put this model in here and look at what happens. Like when I put the model, position the model slightly behind the front model, you can see the shadows that are thrown on the male model because of his position, right? Now if I move this and I move this light so that it points in here, now it fills those shadows in. And you can change the settings on the light. If I click on this, you can see the light's currently set to half power right down here. I can take the power down and you can see it getting dimmer, or I can turn the power up, you can see it get brighter. I can change the zoom of the flash, so I can narrow that zoom beam or widen it out. This is a really, really cool, powerful tool for modeling and preparing for photo shoots, especially if you want to try a lighting setup and you don't have a subject that you can work with. Charles says, this is an awesome tool. Wonder how it would work on a still life. I don't know if you have still light subjects that you can drop in here. Light, speed light, helper, props. I mean, you could kind of, like you've got a plant here, you've got box and sphere and cylinder, so you could sort of mock up a still life setting with this, with, you know, like here's the cone now, right? So if I put the cone in here and I delete the models from the scene, I can lower the camera down so that it's shooting at an angle that hits that cone and model the light around that. And I can take these lights and I can bring them way down. So you could do it with still life. It may not be exactly the subjects you're planning to shoot, right? But you've got reference shapes that can represent them similarly enough that you could still use this for still life as well. So I would highly recommend, yes, you can print the overhead light diagram. So once you've got a setup, like let's just say I'm going to cross light this thing. So I'm going to move this speed light in back and I'm going to bring it down low and move this up here, right? And we'll cross light it like this. Once you're done here, you can go to, I can't remember, it's been a little while since I used it. You click the camera here and it like takes the shot. Here we go here. And it gives you this lighting diagram export. So in here it shows you the image, and then you can tab. So here's your photo viewer. Then you have this tab up here, and you can switch to the lighting diagram export. And here's your above, and it gives you like the specific information. The speed light is set at 200 millimeters at full power. The flash head is at 0 degrees. The beam spread is at 17 millimeters. The height is 0.74 meters off the ground. All of this different data. Same with this other light that was in here. I didn't change anything here. It gives you all of the camera information, ISO 100, shutter speed, aperture. Gives you also the 3D model, and you can actually zoom in on that if you want a better, different view. You can change the angle of it, whatever works. And you can export these as JPEGs or PDFs, and then you can print those out for reference.
Now, Steve's asking, does it have modifiers as well?
Yes, absolutely. So down here you have like all of these tools right here. So models, lights, speed lights, helpers, and I'm going to click on this light right here. And under speed light, you can say speed light with an octabox, speed light with a bigger octabox. Here's an umbrella that is reflective. Here's a shoot-through umbrella. Here's a strip light. Here's a softbox, right? So let's say I want to put a strip light in there instead. And then I can move that strip light around. Whoops, I just moved the camera. And again, you can aim it at your subject however you want and change all of the settings and see how it's going to affect your scene. And you can also add flags. Flags are a little bit difficult to work with, but like if I bring this in here and I say put it in front of this, you can see how I'm starting to flag off the light on the subject as I move it through the scene. So all of these different tools are available. Grids are available. Gels are available. For instance, let me bring this light back here. I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to point it up a little bit better. And now let's grid this light. Color film, let's put a blue gel on it. Boom, right there. Okay, so now you can see the blue gel and the look that it creates in the image because we've added that blue gel in there. And I can move this flag in, which is going to cut more of that light from the back, and then you can see the intensity of that blue gel getting even stronger. So this is, yes, it does have a trial period to test it. This is very cool software, like I said, and it's not terribly expensive. Again, let me go back and just hop on the website and see how much it is. I think, like I said, I paid like 30 or 40 bucks. Set Light 3D. Let's see, Satellite 3D, shop, basic, which is what I have. Okay, it's 50 bucks, a little bit more than I thought it was. And there is a trial download. If you get a higher version, it offers like more stuff, so it'll tell you the difference between the two. Like, to me, I didn't see there was much more that I was getting out of the studio version versus the basic version. You have 3 room templates, large, medium, small, whereas on the studio you can like create your own room. You can put in a limited number of flashes in there. You're limited to 5 with the basic. I don't often use more than 5 flashes, so I found that to be fine. So it's a really great tool, and I highly recommend it. I don't know how much let's see how much the studio version is, just for grins. So it's $137 for the studio version. I don't know if it's worth that. I'd start with the basic version.
Yeah, can you throw a link in the chat for those guys?
Absolutely. But let me grab this, and this is the tool that I am talking about. So here we go. Set Light 3D software. And again, this is not an endorsement. I'm not getting... this is not a sponsorship. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm simply sharing this tool because I find it very useful. They've never contacted me. They've never paid me anything. I've never gotten it anything from them. So there's that tool. I think you guys that want to try to plan lighting setups and photo shoots and try different stuff, that's very, very much worth working with. Alrighty, Google has outwitted me, Jason says, to a big surprise. Can you share the link? We got that in there. Let's see, what do we got going on in the chat? And then we'll take the next questions that we got from Facebook. Peta says, looks great, seems fair for what it is. Tom says, on prep for a photo shoot, what percentage of your fee do you ask the client for? I asked for 10% and had burned 2 or 3 times by clients canceling the shoot the day before. Any tips to stop that? Steve says what I would say, which is 50% down, non-refundable. Now, you can obviously make a refund at your own discretion, but if you have non-refundable as part of the terms, that gives you a certain amount of assurance that A, they're going to show up, or B, you're going to get some compensation for your time. Yeah. Mark, how do you handle that?
Oh, myself, for just like family photo shoots, I honestly haven't had any issues with people canceling, so I don't normally ask for anything up front. For weddings, it's a different story because it's so far out, and if they want the date saved, then absolutely, and it's a lot more money for a wedding. So typically for a wedding, I ask for about at least 40%.
Cool.
Yeah.
All righty. Yeah, Rick says same thing, deposit on weddings. Rick, is your deposit non-refundable? Obviously, you know, barring your own discretion on a refund. Is that part of your like standard policy? And Rick says, my family sessions are paid full when booked online, or paid full book online, which, again, puts that skin in the game for the client and makes sure that they'll show up there. So that's really the way to do it. You know, figure out the amount that you are comfortable with. No refund, but discretion can change it, Rick says. That's a pretty standard policy, and that's how I'd handle it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or a partial refund or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. Jason says, meaning I tried to modify the link so YouTube would let me post it. No go on that. Yeah. Tom says I'd lose out double. I could have booked someone else in their slot. Exactly. Yeah, that's why that non-refundable, you know, bigger amount for that deposit covers you and your potentially lost revenue. Because again, then at least, you know, if they don't show up and you're not getting paid in full, you're at least getting paid in half, which minimizes your risk.
Yeah, exactly.
On that.
Yeah,
Rick says,
the big thing is realistically, your work, half of it is the shoot and half of it is the editing. And,
yes.
And if you've at least got your shoot covered, then the editing, which you may have been planning on doing a week down the road, a few days down the road, if something else comes up that you can stick in that time slot, then it's not so bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At least cover your time for the shooting.
Yeah, and another thing that might be worth doing is what, I don't know how useful this would be, but you know how like dentists and doctors will have a cancellation list? Like if you have a client that wants to get something done fairly quickly and you can't because you're booked up, you could say, well, you know, it doesn't happen often, but occasionally I do get a cancellation. I could put you on a cancellation list. And, you know, if something does happen, I could give you a call and you might be able to get it done sooner. So that could be another way to minimize that loss as well. But I think the down payment, non-refundable, barring your own discretion, is pretty much standard and is the easiest way to go and to mitigate those losses.
Yep, yeah. Completely agree.
All right, so let's get back to the questions, prepping for Photoshoot. Again, feel free to drop anything you have in the chat for questions. We had gotten some earlier on Facebook when I posted about the show tonight. And let's see what we got here. So, view 2 more comments. I know we had one from Christopher who said, it's difficult sometimes to understand what the client wants, even though you try asking the right questions. Now, Christopher, could you clarify on that as to what you mean what the client wants? I'm imagining you mean specifically the kinds of photos that they want delivered, but I just want to make sure. And while you are clarifying that, Christopher, Mark and I will share our thoughts on that. But first, let's see what we got in the chat here. 50% it is, Tom says. Rick says, I will build kit lists for larger jobs, diagram and build in mod boards for some. Kit lists for larger jobs, diagram and build mood boards, I think you mean.
Yeah, that probably makes more sense.
Okay, yeah. So, Mark, why don't you go ahead and start? Like, how do you communicate with the client back and forth to make sure that you understand what the client wants and that you guys are on the same page? Like, what are the tools that you use to make sure you know what they want?
That's kind of a tricky one because you like to think that you know what they want, but if I am communicating with them and there's something that I don't think that they're understanding, or I'm not understanding them right, I'll try and ask the question a different way, just to make sure that we're 100% on the same page. I, I, and another thing too is, at least with weddings, anyways, if I make sure that they have a shot list, so especially like like family group photos and that. Even this 30th anniversary I'm doing this coming Saturday, same sort of thing. I basically suggested that they come up with a list, so therefore nothing is missed. If they have specific families or specific members they want shot together, or whatever the case is, if they have a list, then everything will get done and won't get missed. Whereas if there's no list, then we might miss Aunt Ethel and they never know about it until the pictures are delivered. So I think the biggest thing, I think, is the communication and lists of specific, especially if there's something really, really important that they want to have. Then if it's on a list, then neither party will forget about it.
Right, right. Now, to take that a step further, because I agree with everything you're saying there, and especially with those shot lists, when you're doing a job, whether it's a party like a 30th anniversary or wedding like Mark was just talking about, or a family or something else, you have that shot list, but you also have to understand what that vision is, and that's part of what Christopher was going at. So to some degree, they're coming to you for your vision and your ability to create an image, but they're also bringing and inputting into that. So what Rick said is where I was going to suggest you go, and that is with things like mood boards and visual representation. So to that, EJ Steele says, ask questions to help build a creative brief / shot list. And that brings up the shot list again. And Christopher said sometimes the client has a vision that they're not able to accurately communicate. I did a shoot for a dealership and they were very vague on the requirements and purpose. So here's how I'd approach it. Number one, ask those questions and get as much detail out of them as you can. Right? And then based upon that detail, put together a mood board or a creative brief, exactly what Rick and EJ mentioned in the chat. And this doesn't have to be super complicated, right? But it's worth like 15, 20 minutes of your time where you sit down, and you could even do this, like you could create a template in, whatever software you use that allows you to easily generate a PDF. And based upon the criteria, the specifics that you've been given by the client, literally create a creative brief. So as an example, let me quickly do a Google and see if I can do a search. Creative brief. To give you a visual idea of what we're talking about, because a visual idea is exactly what we're going for, and a creative brief is just going to give you visual parameters that you can take back to the client and say, okay, based on what you told me, this is what I'm envisioning. And you can say, throw in things like a color palette, throw in a couple of sample images that represent the kind of lighting or posing or whatever it is that you might be going for in that particular set of photos, and essentially create, again, a lookbook, whatever you want to call it, that gives you something visual that's your interpretation of what they've told you, and then you give that back to them and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking based on what you've told me. Does this fit what you're looking for? Please look it over and then let me know what, if any, changes you want to make to this. Because if they have something visual they can look at and they can say, no, I don't like that color palette, or no, like this lighting is not at all what we're looking for, or these poses, if poses are appropriate, are not at all what we want. Those things. And this is where tools like Pinterest, Google image search, Instagram, whatever you use for your own visual reference and inspiration can come in handy, because if you have this sort of bank of reference material, then you can pretty quickly throw together something like this and be able to deliver it to the client.
Yeah, if the customer is being vague, then you really have to basically, if they're not telling you what you want, you have to tell them what you think they want, and they have to confirm that that's what they want. You can go in there just shooting all willy-nilly, hoping that this is what they want, and then if it turns out it's not what they want, then you sort of have a bit of a situation. But at least if they're not telling you and you tell them something and they agree to that, then you should be good.
Right. Okay, I think I found one. So I'm going to switch it over so you guys can see. So like this is a magazine. Prolific Quarterly is a magazine that I submitted to a few years back, and they still send me their mood boards in case I want to submit again. So like here, this is their summer mood board for whenever the heck I received this. And you can see here, like they've got this set of inspiration images here. They've got these particular looks. And this isn't a great one, but it, you know, at least gives you kind of an idea. You're visualizing what they're looking for. Let's see if I can find a better one. Like here's another one. This is a very basic one, but they gave, you know, here's the color inspiration they had. So like these were the colors that, this is really obnoxious looking. Those, you know, they had a color palette, they had a style report, you know, for you to look at to get inspiration for, you know, different ideas, things like that. That's what I would recommend you do and deliver to them as part of the process of getting to the shoot and planning for it. Okay, so I know that was long-winded. I apologize for that. Jason says, Christopher, you're describing every software project ever. Right. Yeah, and you know, you don't, depending upon the situation too, it doesn't have to be like a PDF deliverable. If you're working with clients, that's a very easy way to do it. But often, like when I'm working with a model and we're coming up with a concept and we're working towards executing a shoot, we're just shooting images back and forth in a message, you know, like on Facebook Messenger and text or whatever like that. And, you know, and so somebody will come to me with an idea and they might have an image right off the bat, you know, and say, you know, I'd like to do something like this. And they go, oh, that's really cool. I really like that idea. And then that starts my brain thinking. So then I go looking for ideas and inspiration. And I'll send stuff back to them. And I'll say, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? I was thinking of this kind of light, you know, these kinds of colors or whatever. And then we fire back and forth until we kind of land down on something that we both agree upon. All that is, of course, is subject to change as you actually go through and execute the shoot. But it at least puts everybody on the same page going into it and allows you to modify from there. Alrighty. So Scott says, and this is something that I'm very curious to see how both you, Mark, and Rick deal with this, because I know Rick's here in the chat. And Dave, too. Dave, are you still hanging around in there? Because this isn't something that I've ever really had to deal with, because I don't tend to do this client work like this that leads to these kinds of situations. Scott says there was a mother in a family photo shoot, or that person, that mother, whomever it is in the family photo shoot, that takes over, and suddenly she's your posing assistant and lighting assistant, and basically you've got a client who's now like trying to be the creative director and bossing you around. And that's a pretty difficult situation to deal with, because they are your client, but at the same time, they are not the photographer, they are not the lighting director, they are not the creative director, and you have to tactfully handle that situation. So, Mark, let me know how you had situations like that arise, and how have you handled those?
Yeah, I have occasionally, they're not like super duper pushy, but they'll suggest. I've had people that suggest ideas, and to be honest, I actually encourage that, because I have lots of ideas, of course, but then sometimes someone will suggest something is like, that's a hell of a good idea. I like that. When we try it and it works well, and it's something that I can add to my to my repertoire, so that further down the road, it's something I can use with someone else. So, but I haven't had anybody who's been super duper pushy where they're basically trying to take over the whole show. I haven't had that. So it's difficult for me to say how I would actually deal with it, because I haven't had it happen. It would probably be a case-by-case basis as to how it would be handled. Like realistically, like I actually have in my wedding contract that basically if someone is being like aggressive or pushy and not letting me do my job, I had the right to just say, that's it. Either this person's gets out of here or I'm out of here type thing. It's not worded exactly like that, obviously, but you get the general idea. But with just like family photos, I don't have anything. It's just sort of a play it by ear type thing. And like I said, I've never really had an issue myself anyways. So I think it would be a case by case basis depending on the person's personality and how they're doing things.
Okay. We've got Sandy and Rick said the exact same thing, which I found pretty funny, which was hand her the camera and say, if you think you can do a better job, go for it. And Rick basically said the same thing. I offer the camera and ask them if they would like a go. And then Rick said also, or the more tactful approach is to put them in front of the lens, they will go quiet. Yeah. Now, one other thing that's really important is considering this, right? If the client... Okay, so if this is a situation where the client is also the subject, the client that's trying to take over is also the subject. In other words, like the mother is in the photographs, you can't do this, right? But if there's a situation where, say you're doing senior portraits, high school senior portraits, and the subject is the graduating student, and the person interfering is the parent. A very, very simple solution for this is just not allowing anybody else in the studio. Like, if you guys remember from, was it last week Joe was on with me? When you were gone, Mark? Was it last week?
No, that was a couple weeks ago.
A couple weeks ago. Anyway, when Joe Edelman joined us, you guys might remember, he talked about that policy that he has, where nobody else is allowed in the studio except for him and the actual subject or subjects that he is photographing. And that is very specifically to avoid that kind of interference that can come from a person who thinks they know better or likes to take control in that way. And, you know, it can be a little bit trickier to handle that, but there are ways to deal with that, right? Number one is making that policy very clear from the very get-go so that it is known that when you are working, it is just you and the subject. Number two, making whatever assurances are necessary that, you know, you're not some kind of creeper who's going to do something terrible to the person in your, you know, in your dungeon basement, because we're not that kind of people. Which means, you know, providing your contact information so that the you know, the person, the parent, the guardian, whomever it might be, can get a hold of you. You know, lay out very clearly the time frame that you'll be working and where you'll be working so that they know where they are. Have a waiting room where they can wait if that's what they want to do. But you need to control your environment so that you are in control of that situation. And that doesn't mean you can't take input like Mark said and like Mark does. It's just that you have to, you know, you have to control that situation. Now, Charles says that's a good idea, except when the subject is a different gender or minor children. And that is a consideration, and that's why I was talking about making those assurances, right? Like that the parents know where the children are, that they have all of the contact information necessary, that you have met with the parents, and that everybody is comfortable with this. All of those things are important.
Yeah, and realistically, if the client doesn't like the situation, then they can always just go to another photographer anyway.
Exactly. And they might not be the right client for you. And right. that is the thing that's important to realize, right? Like, not
all people are for all clients.
Exactly. There's this idea that you have to take every client that comes your way, right? And you are trying to sell them on your services and get them to hire you so that you can earn some money and provide them a product. And generally speaking, that's true. But you, as the photographer, have every right to refuse a client and just say, look, I don't think this is going to be a good fit. You know, or maybe they make that decision. But either way, if something doesn't feel right for you, then you can call it off as well. You know, if you have a mother that's insistent that they need to be there, then you can probably guess that that mother is going to be an interfering mother in the photo shoot. And maybe you just say, I'm sorry, my policy is that, you know, it is just me and the subject. You're welcome to wait in the waiting room while we shoot, but you can't be in the studio. And if they won't accept that, then you can just say, well, I'm sorry, but then I guess we're not going to be a good fit. And, you know, you can even recommend somebody else if you want to that doesn't have that kind of a policy.
Mm-hmm.
EJ Steele says all clients are the right/best ones. I would disagree with that.
Yeah, I would.
I think you might be being sarcastic, though. I'm not 100% sure. And Peter makes a good point. It's not that you're necessarily going to be alone in the studio with them, right? Like, you can have a hair and or makeup artist in there with you. You can have another party in the studio. It's just, if you are dealing with a parent and or guardian or a boyfriend or even a friend, they can very easily interfere with the shoot directly or indirectly. And some photographers feel differently about this. It is up to you in the end as a photographer to make a decision about it. But if you are dealing with, if you allow people into your studio that can interfere, then you're going to have to deal with that interference. And when they start interfering, that's when your tact is going to have to come out and be at a high level of skill, because you've got to be able to do your job and deliver your product. And if somebody's messing with you, you're not going to be able to do that. So if you're going to allow them in, then you have to have a sort of toolkit to deal with. And RJ and Sandy had one suggested. Another suggestion is just to politely say, I appreciate your input, but I need you to just, let me do my work, please. I'm the photographer, I'm the professional here, and I can't have you interfering like that. They might get upset if you do that, though. And that's just the reality of things.
Yeah.
EJ says, correction, not the best ones. Okay, got it. Yeah. Tom says, I always have a guardian in the room when I'm shooting a subject under 18 years of age. That's a legitimate consideration. I can totally understand that. Again, it could also be that you choose to have a makeup artist in there if you want to enforce that policy. I'm not saying that's what you have to do. I'm just saying that is an option for dealing with that.
It's what works best for you.
Right, exactly. Sandy says, my kid's dentist had a no parent in the room policy. There was a window where you could watch them. I guess parents were a big pain in the ass. That's a really good solution. Put a window in your studio so they can see what's happening, but they can't interfere.
Yeah.
That might cost you some money to put a window in somewhere, but it is an option. But yeah, dealing with people can be a pain in the butt. I mean, that's the truth
Definitely.
of it.
Yep.
Okay, so Sandy has had a question or had a problem that she wanted some help with, which is finding people to actually have a photo shoot. And that is something that can be challenging. So there are a number of different ways that you can go about this. Mark, you were talking about this at the beginning of the show, so go ahead and share a couple of the ways that you've gone about finding people, and then I'll share some of mine as well.
Yeah, so I think when you're first starting out, the main thing people do is actually get on the Model Mayhem and find models in their area, and kind of start from there. But that depends a lot on your area, because myself, in my specific area on Model Mayhem, I think last time I looked, there was only one model that was listed. So I ended up actually getting onto Facebook and joining some local groups that are specifically for photographers and models and makeup artists, etc., and so on. And you basically set something up there. You get to know who the different talent is in your area. If they're having small little gatherings, go to that, so you get to know everyone. Like the one group that's semi-local, they once a month they have a coffee gathering where you go to a coffee shop and you hang out for a while and drink coffee or whatever you drink there, and you meet the other photographers and meet models and so forth, and you utilize those groups that are in your area. Like I said at the start of the show, I had posted a sort of a last-minute thing saying I was going to be in town on one evening, and if anybody wants to get together, and that I got a surprisingly good response to it. So the groups definitely seem to work well for me for hooking up with people to shoot, either whether it's with models or even just other photographers, and just go out and shoot some random stuff around the town.
Exactly. So Model Mayhem is a resource you can check out. Like Mark said, your mileage may vary on that depending upon your location. Yeah. You also have to create an account and go through the whole process of joining, which isn't hard, but it's a little bit tedious, and they have to actually approve your account. Once you're on, though, it's not a big deal. Now, after that, like Mark said, you can just throw out this information and say, hey, you know, I'm looking to do some shooting. Is there anybody who's interested in modeling? I guarantee you there are people in your friends and or family network who are interested in modeling and getting photos taken. And so just posting stuff like that on Facebook or on Instagram, if that's your network, or wherever it happens to be, will likely net you one or two or more people who are interested and would be willing to work with you to take some photos.
Yeah, and usually you get hooked up with one model, you post it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and you tag them. Mm-hmm. Their other model friends will see it, and they'll probably at least connect with you and start following you. And I've had that happen where I shoot with one person, and then someone who saw the work and follows that person starts following me, and then start chatting with them and start working with them, and then the network slowly grows.
Exactly. I started finding people by doing basically a combination of what you did, Mark, and what I was just talking about. On Facebook, this was 3 or 4 years back now, I had decided I wanted to try to start like a little photo club so we could regularly get together and shoot and practice lighting and portraits. So I looked for a few photographers and some local people who were interested in doing that. Just all, you know, very casual, let's get together and do this. And from that, my network just started growing to the point now where between that and going to actual events, which is something that Jason mentioned in the chat here. Jason said you may find shoots on Facebook where people arrange it all and you show up and you take some pictures. And he says you'll probably need to turn in some shoots or prints, which is called trade for print or time for print or time for photos. All are variations on the same idea, which is that, you know, if you and the person you are photographing, the model, whatever you want to call them, agree that nobody's paying each other monetarily, but rather you're paying with your time as a photographer and they're paying with their time as a model, and you agree as a photographer that you will deliver prints to them or the digital photos in return. And that's a great resource. Now, there are lots and lots of events that happen all over the place. As an example, this thing that I was just at that I talked about at the beginning of the show called After Dark, you know, this was kind of turned into a 4-day learning / shooting event where you could meet a whole bunch of models, work with and shoot them. That particular event was $400. Now that's a lot of money, and that might not be something that you can splash out at the moment. But then there are other events like the one I try to go to every year in September called Models, Monsters, Motors, and that one costs like $40, and you are there all day long, and there are literally, you can't throw a stick without hitting a model. There are plenty of people to work with. It's great for both networking and actually working with and photographing people. And then the more you get yourself into those kinds of situations, the bigger your network's going to grow and the more people you'll have to shoot. And because I've done all of that over time, like I'm at a point now where, you know, I don't have a hard time finding somebody to work with because I have a lot of connections. I have a lot of friends who are models, and you know, they know me, I know them, and we regularly want to collaborate with each other. So I'm actually at a point now where I'm very fortunate because of that. I've got more people who want to shoot with me than I currently have time to shoot because of this house renovation and everything else. So, you know, I'm in a feast sort of situation, feast or famine. I'm in the feast in that I have lots of people to shoot with, but that has built up over time. So look for those kinds of events, look for those groups, and start reaching out to your friends and family network to find people that you can shoot with.
Yeah, if you have a reseller that sells camera gear near you, and it's possible they'll do events on a semi-regular basis as well too. So you can check your local supplier, check their website, see if they do have anything going on too. So it might be another avenue for meeting people. You might not meet models so much, but you can at least meet other photographers, and other photographers can probably point you in the direction for some local models anyways. So
that's a really good point. Yeah, a lot of your local camera clubs are a good resource, even if they're not like portrait / working with models specific. They can be. That's a really great point, Mark. We've got a couple of bits in the chat that I want to catch up with. So Charles, I know you've got a question. We'll get to that in a moment. Rick said if you're starting out photographing your friends or family or friends of friends, and then move on to the model groups, and that's good. You can go right to the model groups if you don't want to work with your friends and family, and some people may want to do that, which is fine.
Just something to add. If you are jumping right into a model group, or even if you're getting into a model group and you are experienced, when you are talking with the models, make sure they know what your experience level is. So if you're brand new, then working with a brand new model might not be as good as working with a model who has some experience, so they can pose for you instead of you trying to pose them if you're not familiar with doing that. And also good to know or advise them what sort of deliverables you get, because some models, when they're new, you're out shooting with them for an hour or whatever, and usually with the trade for idea, it's not uncommon for the deliverable to be like 4 to 6 edited images, and if the model's new, they might be expecting to get like 20 or 30 photos. So the communication is key, especially if you're starting out and or the model's starting out.
Yeah, I was going that exact same place, and I'm glad you made that point, because that is incredibly important. Both agreeing upon what you're delivering and sharing your experience level so everybody knows, going in where you're at. Mm-hmm. And that leads into Mike's question, which was, when you give the client their photos, is there a size you give them, like 8 by 10? You don't generally actually have to give prints as much anymore. Back in the film days, it was actually prints that you would deliver, because that was literally the deliverable. But these days, if you're doing trade work like that, generally speaking, delivering the digitals, full resolution digitals, so that they can use them for their own uses, is acceptable. And like Mike, I was looking at Mike's name here. Like Mark said, you don't necessarily want to deliver. Like, you don't want to shoot an hour and give them all of the photos that you shot. You want to go through those. You want to, pick your 4 to 6 or whatever you feel comfortable delivering, and edit those and deliver those finished images. You do yourself and the model a disservice if you just give them everything, because there's going to be stuff on there that you're not going to be proud of, just because everybody takes crap shoots still. Like, everybody still takes crappy photos, because we all have to take shots to get to that end result. So,
or misfocus or whatever. Right.
Whatever it might be. So that's really, really important. Rick had a point too when it comes to like the group shoots. And this really just kind of goes in general, but it is also something that can happen if you go to a lot of the group shoots, which is that if you can get too comfortable in what you're doing. And that's very true. You want to constantly be pushing your boundaries and pushing your own skill levels, so you're not just doing the same thing over and over. This is actually something I see a lot of when I go to the group shoots, which is people who, like, as an example, right? Like, you'll go to a shoot, and the shoot often will have a theme. One of the ones that I just went to was a circus theme shoot, and it was shot at a haunted house. And so you have all of these models who are done up in these wonderful outfits with this wonderful makeup and wardrobe and everything. And you've got this great set and scene to work with, a haunted house. You can do some amazing stuff. And I'll see a lot of people who just grab a model and just throw a light up, with a softbox on it at 45 degrees off axis to the camera, and just take pictures of them, right? And there's nothing beyond they're lighting up the model and they're taking pictures of the model, right? Like, they're not working the wardrobe, they're not working the set, they're not lighting the set, all of those kinds of things. And I get it, like, if a person's learning and that's all they know yet and they're trying to get beyond that, doing that is fine as part of your progression. But you can't get too comfortable, because if you get too comfortable, you're just going to produce mediocre work. And, you're not going to be happy with it, and your potential clients or whomever you're trying to show your images and impress aren't going to see what you want them to see either.
Yeah, this is sort of add to what you're saying. RJ had mentioned about groups versus one-on-one, and I completely agree with his points. Like, I think groups are good to get together, to get to know everybody, and you shoot, but don't expect a ton of good stuff out of that. But with the networking part of it, you get to know the models, and then you can connect with them later and just do a one-on-one shoot. What I always find with the group shoots is that you don't actually end up getting as good a quality photos as you could working alone, because you're working around other people. You're kind of having to make sure you're not in their way, and it's a little more difficult posing the model because someone else maybe has posed them a little bit differently. So definitely those points are good. And somebody else had mentioned, who was it? Was it Tom, or was it? I don't remember. Yes. Anyways, it was mentioned about the delivering of the size of the print.
Yeah.
And that was Mike. Okay. So anyways, what I do when I deliver my images to them is I'll give them the high res and the low res, and basically tell them the low res is for social media.
Yeah.
And the high res is if you do decide you want to print something out. And so therefore, they're not taking the high res and posting them on Facebook, and then Facebook is compressing the crap out of them and making them look like crap. So
Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. And also, what I'll do once in a while, I don't do it all the time, but if it's a model that I really like working with, and we decide we're going to get together a second time, I'll typically sometimes take one of the shots that I really like from the previous shoot that we had, and I'll actually print it out, because I've got the printer to be able to do it, and then I actually give them that image for so they have something if they do want to frame something, or for their own hard portfolios. So I like to do that. This is a bonus, because it just makes yourself look better, and basically you make yourself look good to them, and they like your work, they're going to talk about you. Yeah,
that's a really good practice. Both the social media sized images, that is something that I do, and the doing a print for them on occasion. It's a good way to just, continue to build a positive relationship with them.
Yeah, and Jeff has just commented, he says, what if they change your photo or make it look like crap? Well, unfortunately, that's hard to control, but if you do see that they change it and post it and it does look like crap, talk to them, basically just say, hey, it's not good practice to do that, not to remove the watermark or change it, because now it doesn't look like what I had originally envisioned. And most of the time they'll say, okay, yeah, sorry, I made a mistake, I'll take it down and I'll repost it. And if they don't, well, so be it. There's nothing you can do about it, and then you just know not to work with them again, because they're not going to respect your wishes. It's simple as that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When I deliver images, I make it a point to put right in, because I send them a message, I've got the images finished, I'm explaining what they're getting, which is the full resolution, and then the images size for use on the web and social media. I also say in there, these are fully edited images. Please do not crop, edit, filter, or alter these in any way. And sometimes they still do it. They'll Instagram filter it, whatever they do. I don't get too up in arms over it, but I also... I am lucky in that the models that I work with are of the same understanding that I am, and so they're respectful of it. I honestly cannot remember a time where I've had a model do that. I did have a time where a model posted one of my images, and one of their Facebook friends downloaded it and did a quote-unquote sick edit, and then reposted it saying, hey, look at this sick edit I did of your photo. And I was like, actually, that's my photo that I shot of, XYZ model. Please don't download and edit them. That's not something you should be doing.
Yeah, don't make my photo look sick.
and it wasn't a big deal. So, you got to choose your battles. And like Mark said, if it's somebody who does that and won't abide by that, then you can just choose not to work with them anymore.
Yep.
Okay, so I want to back up to Charles's question, but okay, I gotta say this though, because both Rick and you, Mark, have said some stuff about shooting in these kind of group shoots and events that I agree with, but I also disagree with. Because you were saying, and Rick was saying, that these conveyor belt shoots are not that great. You don't really learn that much, and people kind of get the same shots with not a ton of engagement from the subject. You know, you're not necessarily going to get the best. I have had a different experience. I'm not saying you guys are wrong, because, you know, this world is not right and wrong, right? It's a place that has a lot of different experience.
You're wrong and I'm right.
Yeah. But when I've gone into these group shoots, I always go in and I always do the prep work for myself. And I'm not saying you guys don't do the prep work either. Don't take that the wrong way. I'm just explaining my approach to these and the results that I've gotten from doing this. I'll go into these kinds of shoots and I always go in with an idea of what I'm going to try to do to challenge myself in that particular situation, in that particular shoot. And generally, I also, in the group events that I go to, I get you ahead of time pick the models that you're going to be working with. And I usually get a chance to work with people that I know are excellent models and excellent people. And in doing that, going in and basically giving myself an assignment, a challenge, and picking people who I always try to add in a few people that I've never worked with to expand my network, but going in there with those things in place, I often get very good work out of those types of shoots. Purposely, because I am trying deliberately to not just do what everybody else is doing. I'm deliberately looking at and trying to work a scene, work the theme, work the wardrobe, and work with people that I know are going to give me quality work. Not everything is great, but I've had good experience at group shoots because I make them something that challenges me. And that's the key kind of to what Rick was saying about them, you know, not being great if you're not getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I've never really done one of these big things like that, Monsters, Motors, whatever the heck it's called. Like, but with me, it's just been
the smaller stuff.
Yeah, like one or two models and the 3 to 6 photographers. And I find if you have a decent ratio of models to photographers, it's not so bad. But if you end up with like 6 photographers and 1 model, then that's mostly where I find it's just not as good, because
what you got is a lot of over-the-shoulder shooting.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you guys on that. So David says he's got to take off. Great topic. Have a good night. You too, David. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so back to your question, Charles. I apologize for the delay on this. So Charles's question was, if you are a professional photographer and I ask you if I could just watch you work, would that be a bad thing, so that I could try to learn from you? And the answer to that is, in my opinion, no, but that's my opinion. You have to approach the photographer, and you've got nothing to lose by asking. I would say do it, but just be aware that there are going to be photographers who are going to be scared of competition and scared of you as a photographer, and those are the photographers who are going to say no because they're afraid of you undercutting their market and their business. Other photographers aren't going to be scared, and those are the people that are more likely to say yes. So if you can find a photographer that will say yes, then it's a great thing to do to learn from them. And better yet, you can offer yourself up as free labor to them. You know, I will assist you on photo shoots if I can just watch and learn. You just tell me what to do and I will do it. That's a great way to get yourself with somebody who can teach you things and do it in an affordable way and do it in a very hands-on way. You're basically offering yourself up as an apprentice, and if you do that, you know, and you find the right one, that'll be great. Like, I've had people who have offered that, and I always say yes. Lots of times it tends to be people who aren't like super committed to it, so they don't end up sticking around a whole lot. But I'm always willing to let somebody come in and work as an assistant with me and learn from me, because, you know, I'm not afraid of them as competition, partly because I'm not competing in that in the market that they might be going for.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. Okay, so Tom did have a question too, and Rick and Mark, I'm going to defer to you guys on this one. Tom says, if hired for an hour for a family portrait, how many finished images would you guys typically give the client?
That's kind of a tough call, because it depends on whether the client is literally just looking for a group photo of them and a couple of photos of like like maybe just the husband and wife or just the kids. If they're just looking for a few photos, then obviously you don't deliver as much. But myself, I like to do is I like to get the group photos, and especially if there's kids like toddler age to maybe like age 10. If it's an outdoor shoot anyways, I like to tell the parents, okay, just let the kids play around. And then I snap on a long lens and I shoot a bunch of candid stuff. And those are usually the ones that turn out the best and everyone absolutely loves. So if it's a case like that, then it's possible of delivering upwards of 30. But if it's just a quick shoot with literally just some the family members and that's about it, and they don't want to do anything special or fancy, then maybe only 10.
Yeah, and Rick was saying in the chat, like he just did a 45 image delivery for an hour-and-a-half session that he did, and that the client will be ordering additional prints.
Yeah,
he
that
says,
sounds about right.
Yeah, it can also depend on the client selection as well. So because I don't shoot this kind of work, I typically, this isn't something I deal with as much, but like generally speaking, my advice would be make sure that ahead of time you have communicated with the client and that they understand a ballpark number of images that you're going to be delivering.
Yeah,
because
myself, I always tell them low and over deliver, because
exactly.
I'd rather say, okay, you're going to get about 30 and deliver them 40 versus saying, oh, you'll probably get 50 and end up only delivering 30 or 40.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. Under promise, over deliver. Yeah. Okay, so Larry's got a question, and Larry says, we've got a couple questions, so I want to make sure I get to these. Let's see. Oh, Mike had a question about what low-resolution number is good for Facebook and online use. 2,048 pixels on the longest edge at 72 DPI or PPI. That term is basically interchangeable. The key is that your resolution is 72 and your pixel count on the longest edge is 2,048. That will signal to Facebook that it's a quote-unquote high-quality image and will minimize the amount of compression and destruction that Facebook does to your image. And that size is also a good general size for general internet, other website usage.
Yeah.
Rick says, I'm the same. I don't allow people, the models or anybody else, to edit my work, and that's right. I agree. So Larry's question was, will going to a group shoot be worthwhile if my goal is to learn how to work with models? I say yes, but again, it's going to depend on it is going to depend upon the group shoot, right? Because like Rick said here, if you're at a workshop where there's 15 people all shooting one model at the same time, you're not going to learn anything from that because you're not getting any one-on-one time from the model. You're not going to get anything very good out of that because everybody's just all shooting the same thing.
Yeah.
What is better is like all of these things that I tend to go to, these group shoots and events, give you one-on-one time with a model or with models. Like that circus thing, I had a schedule of 8 different models, I think it was, that I was going to be working with. I had an hour with each model. And so that is an excellent way to learn about working with models, because then you have one-on-one time. You're going to be working with a number of different people, and during that entire time, you will be learning, working one-on-one with, gaining experience, and getting exactly the kind of thing that you're looking for, right? Like, so that's the kind of thing you could go into one of those shoots with as a goal. And what's great about those events is those events, like the ones that I go to at least, are very often populated with both beginner models and beginner photographers, which is great because everybody's aware that people are here of different skill levels, and everybody's aware that this is both an opportunity to learn from each other and to try to create some really fun work and, have a fun time and a great experience.
Yeah. But with me, the group gatherings, like not necessarily the type of stuff you're talking about, but just like the stuff I do. I know we'll be shooting, but for me, it's more the networking, just getting to know everybody, and that I just use it for that, and then you get to know. Especially if you're looking to work with models, you get to know the models that are there, and you connect with them, add them as Facebook friends or Instagram friends, whatever your preferred choice is, and then you start chatting back and forth with them, and you set something up.
Right. Another thing you can do for learning how to work with a model is you can actually, if it's something that you can budget for, you could hire a model for an hour or two. It might cost you $100, $200, $300, $400. It'll depend entirely upon the market you're in and the models you might reach out to. But you could hire a model.
Absolutely.
And then have them come to your studio and work with them. And you can even, when you hire them, you can say, I want to learn how to work with models. So, I'd like to hire you to A, do a shoot so we can take some photos, but B, I'd also like to learn from you what is expected of me as a photographer.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to go about something like that.
Yeah, Sandy asked with the width of the 2048, what about the height? Basically, when you export it, whatever you keep the longest width at 2048, just tell your software to maintain the aspect ratio, and it'll automatically calculate the other side for you.
Yeah, so the height will just come in at whatever the height should be to maintain the proportions of the image.
It depends on how you crop the aspect ratio of your camera, etc., and so on.
Right. In fact, I'm going to switch over here real quick to Lightroom and just kind of show them the export setup in Lightroom so they can see how that would look. So like this image right here, if I'm going to export this, I just go into my export dialog, and I already have a 2048 pixel export setup. So when I scroll down here to the image sizing, you can see here, whoops, I scrolled up too fast, that for the resize to fit is set for the long edge. And that long edge is set to, I'm trying to wiggle my mouse so it gets big so you can see where I'm at, is set to 2048 pixels at a resolution of 72. And right now, if we look over here on the right, the dimensions of this image are 3,456 by 4,608. So in sizing the long edge, the 4608 down to 2048, it's just going to maintain the dimensions of that image on the export. So let me find that, and it goes into a folder called 1920 pics. Don't ask me why, I've never changed that. But you can see here's the exported image, and if we look at the details here in the Finder window, you can see down here that the dimensions of this are 1365 by 2048. So it just automatically sized it to the correct width or height, depending upon which edge is the shorter, to maintain the correct aspect ratio like Mark was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Charles is also asking what would be a good size that you could upload that would be hard to download and print again.
Okay.
That's a tough one, because if you make it too small so you can't print it, it's going to look like crap. It's one of those things where you either put it out there for people to see to hopefully get business, and you take your chances and the odds of someone doing that are probably pretty slim and none anyways. But even if it does happen, there's not much you can do about it. You could put a watermark on it, but it's still not going to stop anybody from printing it.
Right.
If somebody wants to do something bad enough, they'll figure out a way to do it regardless.
Yeah. And that's just life on the internet, right? So if you're going to put something out there, but 2048 it is a good size for web use because A, it is generally big enough to be able to pleasantly view on most websites or monitors or phone screens or whatever, and B, small enough that you're pretty limited in the printability. Like you could print a 4x6 out of that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, probably 4x6.
Yeah, but they're not, anything much larger than that, and it's going to start to look like garbage. So it's not something you really have to worry about. I've always been of the opinion that once it's on the internet, it's inevitable that somebody is probably going to steal it. So I keep an eye out. Like if I see my images being appropriated by somebody else, I'll go after that and I'll protect my copyright. But at the same time, like I'm not freaking out about it because it's just life. It's the world we live in right now.
Yeah. And if you put smaller resolution on there so it can't be printed at all, it's just generally going to look like garbage, and it doesn't look good on the work that you're trying to show off to try and get more business. So it's definitely a catch-22. But if you let stuff like that worry you all night and all day, then you'll end up just never posting anything, and it's just it's a shame that you're not doing that, because you need your work to be out there in order to get attention to it.
Yep, that's exactly right. All right, we had a comment from Rick that I think is very appropriate, which is that you can, or not Rick, Tom. Tom said, 4 of my friends and I are photographers, so what we do is hire 3 models and 1 makeup artist, and then pick a location and split the bill 5 ways. And that's an excellent way, as Rick said, to save some money. So if you do have a few friends, you can diffuse the cost of those hirings, so you can save some money and get an opportunity to work with different models and have a makeup artist for your concept or whatever it might be. So that's an excellent tip, Tom. Thanks for sharing that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Rick said sometimes you'll get models and clients posting screenshots of an online gallery and sharing that, which looks terrible, and that's very true. Whenever I put up an online gallery, which again, I don't do much because I don't do that kind of work, but on the occasions that I do that, with the online gallery, I actually do put kind of a big obnoxious watermark to prevent that. Once I deliver the images, I don't have that watermark on there, but putting like a giant obnoxious watermark, usually like, right in the middle with the image number on a gray bar, so it looks like really terrible, that prevents that from going out and being shared out. And they put a Facebook sticker over it. All right. We got about 4 minutes left here on the show, so if you guys have any other questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We have one other question from the Facebook. I just saw that it got put in here about an hour ago from many. So I'm going to ask this, which we're going to answer this question, which is what gear to bring on a road, on a location photo shoot. And that's
going to be shoot dependent, of course. But
it is going to be shoot dependent, right? So, Mark, why don't you go ahead over how you approach it, and then I'll go ahead and I'll share how I approach it.
Okay. Well, if it's an outdoor shoot, I typically, well, obviously my camera gear. I tend to bring everything, but
the kitchen sink? No, I'm just kidding.
But the kitchen sink, yeah. But outside of the actual camera and the lenses itself, if it's an outdoor shoot, usually absolute minimum I bring is a 5-in-1 reflector, because you can either use that to shine some light into faces, or use it as a scrim, and or whatever the case is. So it's a cheap tool to have, but I think everybody who's doing work outside should have one. Alternatively, speed lights is good, especially if you're going to be working in a shaded area, because then you can just throw some light into your subjects just to brighten them up a little bit so they stand out a little bit from the background. That, for the most part, primarily that's what I bring. If I'm doing landscape type stuff, or like environmental stuff and the people are not involved, I'll bring a tripod. But I myself, if I'm shooting people, I never use a tripod, because I hate the
bulk of it.
Well, not the bulk of it, but when I'm shooting, I like to be able to quickly shoot over here or shoot down there. But if you're on a tripod, then you got to adjust it every time, and it's just a pain in the ass, and you end up missing too many shots using a tripod when you're shooting people.
Yeah.
So for people shoots, the tripod never comes out, but for landscape or environmental stuff, that kind of thing, I'll have the tripod with me.
Right. So for me, it is very much shoot dependent, but at the same time, I kind of tend to end up bringing most of the same stuff along because of the type of work that I shoot. So first and foremost, when you are doing some kind of a location shoot, I highly cannot stress enough, recommend that you use a checklist to pack your gear. Because if you don't have a checklist, there's an opportunity for you to forget something. And it is not a matter of if, but when you will forget something. Because your brain is just not designed to hold long checklists of stuff in your head. And you will forget. Like, I promise you, you will. So I have a checklist, and here's the thing. I used to have, like, you know, a checklist that was just like, you know, a checklist for if I'm doing photo work, a checklist if I'm doing video work, a checklist if I'm doing something else. And then I was like, this is really dumb. I'm just going to use one checklist that has all of my gear on it. And then as I pack, I make an evaluation. I make a decision based upon what I'm about to go out to shoot. And I just go down the list and I go, do I need that? Yes. Okay, is it in the bag? Yes. And I check it off, right? So all of my gear on there, everything that I could possibly take with me is on there. And when I pack, I go through the checklist and I pack everything that I might need for that checklist. And I tend to be an overpacker. I try not to go crazy. But I tend to be an overpacker because I'm of the opinion that it's better to have too much gear and not need it than to have too little and to need what I don't have. So, like, when I go on a location photo shoot, here's what I've been bringing lately, and this has been working out really well. I have a roller case. Well, you guys saw me pack. If you watched my Vegas packing video, you kind of saw. Yeah, Jason just said, I saw my PPI packing video. If you watch that video, that's what I pack to bring on the road. That allows me to shoot pretty much anything photo and or video related. But if I had to just distill it down to like what I'm going to take for an on-location photo shoot, I'm going to bring 5 lights that I'm not going to use, but because I want backups, my 3 80-200s and my 2 TT600s. And again, I'm not going to use all 5 lights unless I get into something really complicated, which can be a lot of fun. But the reason I bring 5 is that the worst thing that can happen is to not have enough lights to do what I need to do, and maybe something goes wrong, maybe I lose or whatever might happen. So I always bring extra lights. And then I bring my 3 light stands, and my brackets to attach my lights to the light stands. I do bring 2 umbrellas, even though I tend not to use them. I bring all of my grids, all of my gels, all of my flags. And then I bring my camera, my backup camera. I bring all of my necessary lenses. Yeah. Roderick's got a couple of bottles of water. I've got water on my list. I don't have baby wipes. I should put baby wipes on there. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, you never know when you have to have a crap in the woods and you need to clean yourself.
Right. But you know, my list covers everything from a case of water to my wallet to business cards to a pocket knife, a multi-tool, which I need to add, you know, everything that I might need. And again, I don't always pack everything, but I do pack to make sure that I have everything that I might need. If you guys are interested in my list, it is obviously gear specific to me, but if you're interested in seeing my list, let me know and I'll just throw up I'll throw it up in the Facebook group so you guys can see it in there. Let me know in the chat if you're interested in seeing that list that I use for packing. Side benefit, you'll see all the shit that I have. Pardon my language. All right, Tom says, quick tip, if shooting with a new / inexperienced model, get them to sign a model release before the shoot starts. It's a very good point. Definitely worth bringing up. Rick said, I tend to take the roller camera bag, a couple of stands, lighting bag, and some modifiers, usually the ones that are portable and fold up. Yes, thank you, roller bags. I agree 100%. I recently, again, you saw it for WPPI in that video, switched over from like 3 or 4 literally shoulder backpack carry bags to 1 roller bag and 1 backpack camera bag, and that's like my on-the-go kit now, which works really well. All right. Last chance, if you want to know about if you want to see my list, let us know in the chat. Otherwise, Mark, we should wrap this baby up. Do you have any last words, any last tips about planning and preparing for a photo shoot that you'd like to share with people?
Communication. It's all about communication. That's always my #1 tip.
Yep. I 100% echo and agree with that. Communication is absolutely key. Doesn't matter if you're working with a client or with a model. The more you communicate, both on set and prior to getting on set, the better your photo shoot is going to be. So, with that, we're going to wrap this baby up. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. As usual, we appreciate it. It is always a pleasure to have you join us and spend your time with us. Peter says, thanks, good guys. We'll be referring back to this stuff. That's awesome. Thank you for the info. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and subscribe to Mark's channel, and subscribe to Rick's channel.
Yeah, might as well.
Might as well, if you haven't
Rick
already.
was very helpful tonight.
And when you do, make sure you like this video. I already said that. I'm losing where I'm going. Anyway, just do what you know you should be doing, which is get out there and shoot some damn photos. All right, people? Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We appreciate it. Yep. We will see you on the next show. Good night. Bye.